Content is either the biggest asset or the biggest liability for your business. If you're watching this video, you already know the question isn't, should I be creating content for my business? But rather, how do I do it profitably and without taking over my life? It took me 2 years and working with multiple 7- and 8-figure founders to figure out the answer. I've seen what works, what fails, and the systems behind brands pulling in millions through content alone. And in this video, I'll be breaking down the 3-phase content scaling roadmap. The exact process to go from doing everything yourself to building a fully delegated content operation that works for you and not against you. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you are on that roadmap, the predictable bottlenecks slowing you down, and what are the key actions that you need to take in order to unlock the next level of scale. Welcome to the content scaling roadmap. So as I mentioned in the intro, in this video I'll be breaking down the 3 phases that every single founder follows in their journey scaling with content. And my promise for you is that at the end of this roadmap, I'll show you how to go from managing everything yourself to building a fully profitable and delegated content operation that works for you and allows you to scale your business organically. Now, before we dive into phase 1, how does this roadmap work? Well, in this roadmap, we'll be covering several things. The first thing that we'll be covering is your role. What is your exact function across each phase in this roadmap? Then headcount, the number of people in your content team at each stage. And finally, leadership structure, how your content team is organized and managed. And in each one of these phases, I'll be breaking down 3 core pillars, starting off with content production, how to efficiently create your content to optimize your production and maximize the amount of volume that you can produce. Then performance and profit, how to optimize your content's financial impact and profitability for your business. And third, team and delegation, so how to build, manage, and grow your content team. Understanding these variables will give you a clear diagnosis of where you're at and what are the key steps that you need to take in order to move to the next level. Also, to make this roadmap extremely actionable for you and simple to implement, I'll be breaking down who each stage is truly for, the predictable bottlenecks and challenges that you can expect to encounter in each one of the stages, and finally, most importantly, what are the actions that you're going to need to take in order to graduate to the next level. And at the end of each phase, I'll do a summary recap of what's the main thing stopping you from growing to the next phase and what is the core action that you need to take in order to graduate. So before we start, I have 2 main disclaimers for you. The first one is that this whole roadmap comes from my experience working with 6-, 7-, and 8-figure founders, working with them to manage their teams, develop their content systems, and scale organically. But this roadmap right here is not a straight manual for success. While we've tested the system with ourselves and clients, don't think of this as a rigid manual for success, but rather a guide or a compass that you can use. Every single business is different, and your business won't always be linear. And so if you find yourself in a position where you seem ahead in one of the core pillars, let's say team and delegation, but you feel behind in, let's say, content production, all this means is that this specific area may become a bottleneck later down the line. Our goal with this roadmap is that you can identify these areas and remove the bottlenecks before it becomes a bigger problem down the line. The second disclaimer is that the information inside this video is pretty in-depth, and so this video will turn out to be a pretty long video. So if you don't have time right now to watch the whole video, or you would like to receive your own free customized content scaling roadmap that's specific to you and your business, you can claim that in the link down below, in the first link in the description. You can fill out your information and we'll set over your customized scaling roadmap. Now, without further ado, let's jump into phase 1, bootstrap. So here's where your content scaling journey really begins. And if you're a founder watching this, you've either been in this phase or you're still here. So you're in this phase if you already understand the power of creating content, you're maybe starting to create content or you want to start to create content, but you have no resources to delegate just yet. So how does this phase look like? Well, your role in this phase is going to be the doer. You're going to be wearing all the hats inside of your content team. You're going to be scripting, you're going to be recording, you're going to be editing, you're going to be basically doing all the core tasks in order to produce content. When it comes to headcount, it's typically just you. You have no headcount yet. And the same goes for leadership structure. So starting up with content production. In phase 1, the main constraint for content production is that your whole content production capacity is low because it all relies on your shoulders and not your personal time. So in order to graduate, we need to find a way to maximize your limited time to increase production to your maximum capacity. For this, we're going to be focusing on 3 key pillars. The first one is choosing your platforms, defining your content pillars and topics, and systemizing content creation. So starting up with choosing your platforms. The main mistake that I see a majority of founders do in this level is they try to master every single platform at once. Posting across different platforms takes a lot of resources and time. And so if you try to do this, you're going to spread yourself too thin. So to make the most out of your limited time, we're going to pick 1 to 2 platforms and stick to them. Now, how do you choose your platforms? Well, I put together a quick checklist of the 5 main social media platforms that you can use to scale your business. So let's get started with YouTube. YouTube is the best platform for long-form depth and trust and discovery. What YouTube allows you to do is to create a lot of authority through long-form pieces of content. The measure for the amount of trust that you create is, on average, how many minutes can you get someone to spend with you. And so if you want to create trust, it is more leverage to produce 1 20 to 30 minute piece of content where someone can watch you for several minutes straight, rather than make someone consume 300 to 400 pieces of content. YouTube is also amazing for evergreen discovery. You can post a video today and that video can still bring leads to your business 6 months, even 1 year down the line. That's why its content has really high ROI. Now, in terms of weaknesses, it is high production effort. If you want to produce good content on YouTube, you need to spend your time researching ideas, producing good quality scripts, recording good quality videos, and editing good quality concepts. Also, it's a really nuanced platform. So if you don't understand the nuance of the platform and the small things that make it work, you can take a bit of time to gain initial traction. For that same reason, time investment is high, but the conversion potential is the highest one we've seen across ourselves and different platforms. So as a summary, YouTube is great for building authority, nurture your audience, and closing high-ticket deals. When it comes to Instagram is a purely visual platform. Another thing that is also great about Instagram is that it allows you to gather all your audience in one specific place where you can nurture them across different formats. And on Instagram, you can use stories, reels, carousels, even DMs to nurture your audience. And so people can choose what type of content to consume, and they can be nurtured across different fronts. The weaknesses is that Instagram is primarily based on short form content. You actually have a limit as of how long the videos that you can post there are. And so if you post a short form piece of content, that's going to tend to disappear in a couple days, even a couple weeks, but it's not going to last years and be shown to people for years to come. Also, the algorithm is unpredictable, so that forces you to be constantly having to iterate, to learn the platform, and to adapt to new trends and things that are coming up to stay relevant in this platform. So for time investment, I've rated it medium because if you actually want to produce good quality content, you need to spend time thinking about your visuals and creating a cohesive brand style that people can associate you to. Instagram has really high conversion potential if you do it right and if you stick to it for a long period of time. But it has less conversion potential than YouTube because of what we mentioned of long form content versus short form content and the amount of trust that each one of those build. If you have a B2C business where you're targeting a more consumer ICP, this platform is the way to go. Now let's move on with LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a B2B absolute machine. LinkedIn was created with the primary purpose of becoming a B2B platform. And so if you're looking for visibility in B2B sectors or to target specific demographics within certain positions like operations, marketing, sales, this is the platform to go for. It is especially good to build thought leadership in your industry, and text is still king, which means that you can test different formats, test different ideas, and allows you to post more volume without getting penalized. Now, some of the weaknesses are that LinkedIn is lower engagement, especially at the beginning. And you cannot do like YouTube where you post a video and you gain traction. You need to proactively DM people, comment on other people's posts, and be posting content every single day to see some traction. It is also crowded with copy-based content, and everything nowadays sounds a bit AI on LinkedIn. And so for time investment, I would rate it as a medium, especially if you want to perfect your copywriting skills. It just takes time to do something good. For conversion potential, I've rated it a 2, and it's not necessarily because I think that it has lower potential for conversion than Instagram. It is because it takes a bit of time to gain more traction, and also because it takes more effort to get noticed. But once you dominate LinkedIn, I know people making 6-7 figures from LinkedIn alone, and it's an absolute B2B machine. So obviously it is going to be best for B2B founders, consultants, and agency owners. Then TikTok, and TikTok is an underrated platform. It is especially built for virality potential. The whole premise about TikTok is to show your content to people that don't know you yet. And so if you want to get discovered and you want fast growth, this is the best platform for you. It is a great space for casual and relatable content where you don't need to seem as professional as LinkedIn, for example. And you can definitely grow an audience of tens of thousands of people in a few months if you master the art of short form content. Weaknesses about TikTok is that you build trust really slowly for 2 main reasons. First, people don't choose what content they consume. But even if they did, in order to build a relationship with you, they would need to watch many pieces of content, which is not optimal. Also, the primary audience of TikTok is a younger demographic with less purchasing power. And so if you're targeting high ticket sales or high ticket B2B services, I would recommend to focus on maybe LinkedIn or Instagram even instead of TikTok. The time investment is medium high because it's a video-based platform where you have to record a video, edit the video, and format it good to get some reach. So you would be spending quite a bit of time here. And it is really good for reach, but I wouldn't say it's the best in order to close high-ticket clients, even though there's some exceptions, especially if you're in the D2C, Gen Z focused founders where you're targeting this niche. Finally, Twitter. And Twitter is amazing to get fast feedback loops. Many founders use this as a copywriting gym where they test different ideas, different concepts, and they validate which concepts get traction on Twitter to turn them into longer pieces of content later down the line. It is also completely underrated for networking, and many people don't know this. But there's some founders managing 7-8-figure businesses with less than 1,000 followers on Twitter that you can reach way easier than if you were trying to reach them on LinkedIn or Instagram. Now, on the downsides, we've noticed that it's a really bad platform for visual storytelling. Instagram is way better for this, and it requires constant posting in order to break through, especially at the beginning when you don't have an audience. The time investment is really low, especially having into account that you don't get penalized the more you post, so you can just think about an idea, test it out, and see how it performs. But I'd say especially in the early beginnings, it really drives leads for your business. I know this is not the case for many people. I know there's many people putting in great numbers with Twitter, but especially at the beginning, it's not the most optimized platform if you're just starting to create content. So Twitter is best for tech founders, solopreneurs, and people that are in the crypto space. I've also seen work really well with this platform. So now that you have an idea of the different platforms, which one should you pick? Well, what we usually recommend for our clients is a mix between long-form, in-depth content through YouTube and pairing that with a short-form based platform like LinkedIn or Instagram. If you're a B2B founder, you want to prioritize LinkedIn. Here's where your primary ICP and your customer base is going to be hanging out. And if you're in a B2C niche, like info consumer brands, Instagram could perform really well for you. So the main idea here is check where people in your customer base, where people that you want to target are spending time, pick 1 to 2 platforms and stick with them. You can later down the line switch platforms or even add more to your stack. So just pick and start posting. Now you have your platforms, you understand how they work. So the next question is, what content should I create? And for this, we're going to be focusing on your content pillars. To put it simple, your content pillars are the 3 to 5 main things that you talk about in your content over and over again. So to give you my example, my whole content is based around my business. So the 3 main things that I talk about in my content over and over again are organic content systems, personal branding systems, and client acquisition systems. These are like the 3 main umbrellas, 3 categories where I can fit every single one of my content ideas. But if you think about your content systems, and now coming back to my example, I can see subcategories inside of each one of these umbrellas. For example, organic content systems, I can think about organic funnels, content workflows, distribution strategies. Or if I'm talking about personal branding, I can talk about audience growth, brand positioning, and thought leadership. You get the point. By pairing all this together, you will find what is your brand core. And I don't want this to sound esoteric. I know there's many people in the internet making complicated explanations. Just choose the 3 things that you're going to talk about in your content and then divide it into 3, 5 subcategories that you can pull content ideas from. But okay, now you have your content categories. So how do you extract specific content ideas? Well, you need to follow a process, and this is exactly what we follow, a process framework. And this process framework is basically taking all the experiences that you gather every single day and turning them into ideas for content. A majority of founders sit every single day in front of a blank page and say, okay, what content do I create? And this can lead to spending 15 minutes just staring at a blank page and not knowing what to do. And so just remember, every single day you're alive. You're accumulating experiences with your family, with your clients, with providers, with the team. You can use these experiences, these things that you've already lived, and turn them into content ideas. So that's what the process framework is for. So you're going to extract pain and bottlenecks from your ICP, results that you generated for your clients, opinions about your industry, about your company, about a framework, about a process, different opinions that you have about things that are specific to your niche and industry, culture things about your company or companies that you admire, experiences that, as I've said, you've gathered with customers, team, or even your day-to-day life, and systems that you've implemented to drive results for your clients. From all this, you can extract tens, if not even hundreds of content ideas that can come to mind by turning this into questions. So what systems do we implement? What results have we generated? You get the idea. Right, so now you know how to pick your platforms, how to pick your content pillars, how to extract your content ideas. So now how do you systemize content creation? As I said before, many founders try to sit in front of a blank page every single day and write content. And this is not efficient and it is really time consuming. So if you want to manage your business, but you also want to create content on the side to grow your business, which is the main reason I imagine you're watching this video, then you might want to think about batching your content creation. And this looks like setting apart 1 session for scripting, 1 session for recording, and 1 session for editing and publishing. This way your calendar can look more like the one that we have on screen, where you dedicate maybe 2 blocks of 2 days, and the rest of the week you can spend managing your business. A critical part of this system is allowing to squeeze the maximum attention from the content that you're already producing. The content repurposing system that we follow with clients and with ourselves in order to maximize the attention area that we generate through our content is taking 1 long form piece of content and breaking that down into 3 short form pieces of content that you can then repurpose across every single one of your short form platforms. So as you can see in the example from a YouTube video, you can turn that into shorts, LinkedIn posts, Instagram reels, and even Twitter posts if you're using that platform. This intelligent repurposing system allows you to have your content for the week scripted and ready to go in a matter of 60 to 90 minutes a week without having to worry about creating new content every single time. So it's by following these 3 steps, choosing your platforms, choosing your content topics and what content to post, and batching your creation, that you will be able to maximize your production in phase 1. Now let's move with the second pillar of phase 1, performance and profit. So the constraint when it comes to your profit and performance in stage 1 is that there's no clear link between your new content efforts and new revenue from this channel. So in order to graduate, what we want to do is set basic tracking systems to track the content performance. Now, it is extremely important to understand the key dynamic of content, especially at the beginning. If you're starting to create content, and especially if you're already bringing revenue from ads or outbound, content may not always be the first touch point. That's why in phase one, the objective is to validate content performance with simple attribution systems. So the first thing that you want to do is track basic engagement. And we do this by setting UTMs in profiles, comments, and posts. You can see some examples here in my screen. I have it set up in my YouTube, in my Instagram, and my LinkedIn, and I also add it in every single one of my YouTube descriptions. That will allow you to track in your landing page, website, using your analytics, where is every single lead coming from? The second thing that we want to do is gather qualitative data from our customers and leads. And to do this, it may vary depending on the industry that you're in. But if you're an agency, for example, you would implement some sort of forms in your website or in the lead magnets to ask directly to people, where are you coming from? All we want to do is implement simple, repeatable questions in different parts of the funnel. Let's say your post-purchase flows, your website, your onboarding, to know the exact impact that every single content channel is having in your business. This will give you validation and act as proof that your content and your content channels are working. And especially, it will allow you to know if people find you through your content or they're nurtured by your content before making the decision to book a call. At this stage, we don't want to overcomplicate this. You want to spend more time creating content, seeing what works, and testing things out rather than obsessing over data, which is needed initial validation and basic tracking systems. In phase two, we will get way more in depth into this. So now if you've implemented all this, you have basic systems in place, and now you can track and know where people are coming from. So let's move on with the third and final pillar of phase one. Delegation. So the obvious constraint in this first phase is that you're doing everything yourself. You have no systems in place and you have no structure to delegate. You may be thinking that I'm going to say that to graduate, obviously you need to delegate, but we're going to be focusing on documenting the processes for future delegation. Because here's the thing, a majority of the founders rush to delegate without systems, and this puts them into a cycle of failures when it comes to hiring. This looks something like this. What a majority of founders experience is they delegate without systems, they get mid to bad results, they're still doing everything while paying someone else that is providing bad results. They end up letting go of this person and start over again with the cycle. The reason for this is that they have no clear system, no clear structure, and they don't know how to train and properly manage people down the line because they haven't documented the processes in phase one. So that's what we want to be focused on in this phase. So here are the things that you want to document before you start hiring. First is the basic company and offer information. Who do you target? What is your current revenue? Or your primary acquisition channels? Things like that. The second thing is previous content results. If there's a specific type of video or a specific topic that has generated good results for you, you want to document that so the person that you bring on your team knows what to double down on. The same thing goes for platforms and formats. What platforms are you focusing on and what are the best performing formats that have proven to show results for you? Then content style, guys. If you want a specific typography, style of visual, videos, animations, you should document this, and please don't assume that people come into your company with inbuilt knowledge of what you want or how do you want your content to look like. I've really seen many people just assume this or give high-level bird's-eye explanation of how they want their content to look and then be let down by the results when things don't go their way. So please be specific, be detailed with all these instructions. Scripting style is a big one. You want people that come in your company to understand how do you want to communicate and how do you want to come across. And finally, what is your publishing process? You have a system from idea to draft and post, and how do you run across that system? But we'll get further into this in stage number 2. Just focus on documenting the basics so when someone comes on board, they have the basic information needed to start running, and then you can improve your content from there. So we finally made it to the recap of phase 1. And so the main constraint from this whole phase is that you have no resources to delegate. And let me be clear, you can create content and you can bootstrap your way to content, but it is not sustainable, especially if you're doing it for long periods of time. Your goal should be to gather the resources to be able to delegate and to build leverage inside of your team so you can focus your time and energy in high leverage tasks. Having said this, if you need to bootstrap your way into getting those resources to be able to delegate, what you should do is try to maximize your production and maximize your output and your personal efficiency up to your personal capacity so you can gather these resources and gather the validation to scale beyond this phase. And once you have the resources, you will be able to move to the second phase of this roadmap, which is called delegate. Okay, so we've seen phase 1, we've seen how to maximize your capacity up to your personal limits and how to generate the resources that are going to allow you to scale. Now let's move into phase 2, delegation. Okay, so you're in phase 2 if you're right now doing everything yourself or want to start creating content, but you have resources for partial delegation, meaning freelancers, contractors, but not a full in-house team yet. And so how does this phase look like? Well, your role in this phase is going to be the coordinator. In this phase, you usually take a step back, and besides being involved in some parts of the content creation process, you're going to be also managing and coordinating the freelancers that are going to come into your business. Headcount is usually you plus 1 to 3 contractors or freelancers. And for leadership structure, you don't have an internal hierarchy structure just yet. You're the manager of individual freelancers. Now, starting off with content production, the main constraint that you're going to face in this phase is that you usually have limited time to produce content because you're managing different things in the business, and consistently usually becomes a struggle. So to graduate, what we want to do is claim back your time by delegating the lowest leverage task and focusing on the highest leverage task that generate the most returns on investment. So to do this, we're going to be identifying the highest leverage tasks that you can put your time and energy into, and we're going to be delegating the other ones. So here's a checklist to identify the highest leverage tasks and which ones you should delegate. Starting off with recording, the time consuming is medium high, depending on how good you're on camera, but it is really hard to train, so it's not that easy to delegate. The best person to do it is you, especially if you're going to be the face of the business, and it's not really something that you can delegate if that's your approach. If you want to be founder first, if you want to build a media empire around your face, your personal brand, and your business, you shouldn't be delegating this at any time. Even if you look at people like Mr. Beast, Alex Ramosi, or any big founder that has a media empire behind them, they usually don't delegate this because they want to be the face of the business. And so if you want to become the core asset for the business, this is something that you cannot delegate. Now, you can get help when it comes to setting up all the cameras, all the gear, the audio, but it really doesn't take that much time, especially if you're not running like a multi 5 to 6 figure production company. So it's not something that I would look to delegate right away. Next off, scripting. And scripting is a high leverage task, even though it takes medium to high time when it comes to producing good quality copy. For that same reason, it is really hard to train, especially if you want to train someone that speaks and sounds just like you. You can only find certain people, either people that have been with you for a long period of time or people that really understand the way you sound and the way that you communicate really in depth. But even then, it's not always going to be you. And yes, AI can help with this, but AI is not quite there yet. So the best person to do it, especially in this stage, is usually you. And I wouldn't say it's a priority to delegate straight away. When it comes to video editing, this is the lowest leverage task that you can put your time into for two main reasons. First of all, it takes an insane amount of time. And second, there's many people that can do it as good, if not even better than you. So it makes sense to delegate straight away. It is mediumly hard to train with some parameters, and based on the documents that we've built in phase one, where you detail how do you want your brand to look like, you can train someone pretty good and they can get 90% quite there. And you're definitely not the best person to do this. If you're a founder running the business, recording the content, you should definitely delegate this as soon as you get some resources to do so. For thumbnail design, it's kind of the same situation. You can train someone to do it pretty easily. It is cheap to delegate. And at the same time, unless you're a designer, there's usually people that have better, more in-depth design skills than you. So that's another thing that you should definitely delegate right off the bat. Formatting and repurposing. It takes quite a bit of time to take your videos, clip them up, and repurpose them into formats that can be used across different platforms. And at the same time, you can train your editor to do this for you. So it is not that hard to train, and you're definitely not the best person to be doing this. So if you're gonna get an editor, might as well pay a few extra €100 a month and get this formatting in the package that you agree upon with your editor. And finally, publishing. It is low leverage, but it doesn't take that amount of time to schedule or even post manually your posts. It is not hard to train at all, but at the same time, you are the best person to do this because it takes basically a few minutes to just schedule the post and leave that all done. You could do that in literally 15 to 30 minutes a week, and that should be all set. So I definitely wouldn't delegate this. So as a summary out of this, the ones that you really want to delegate straight away are video editing, thumbnail design, and formatting and repurposing. And finally, scripting is something that you want to think about, and it depends on personal preference. If you don't want to spend time learning copywriting, nailing your brand voice and your tonality, and you have the extra resources to bring someone on that can take this off your plate for you, I would consider delegating this. Now, if you want maximum amount of control for how you come across and what is your brand tonality and voice and what exactly do you want to be known for, then I would definitely consider doing this by yourself. By delegating this, you're taking 50% or even more of your workload when it comes to content creation off your desk, which means that you're going to have time and you're going to have the bandwidth to be able to test more ideas, more concepts, and basically produce more content. Not only posting more content, but also you can switch your time and attention to focusing on higher leverage tasks. For example, no one can replace me on camera, so I would much rather be in front of a camera, practicing my messaging, how I come across, my delivery, rather than spend time editing a video that someone else can edit for me. Nailing your messaging, your positioning, your delivery on camera, these are higher leverage tasks that you definitely want to be spending more time on. Now, beyond just increasing your production limits, we also want to take a look into strategy here. Because what happens is that a majority of founders, once they get some help to take care of the tasks that are sucking the time of them, what they choose to do is add more platforms and add more complexity into their stack. And it's by doing this that you just end up in phase one. You have no time and no leverage again. Instead of adding more complexity, adding more overhead, what you want to do is just double down on the two platforms that we've mentioned in phase one that are working the best for you and go all in these ones. And I know what you may be thinking because I've heard this a million times. This is not going to happen to me, but it does. And people trying to get fancy too early on. So resist the urge to try to add complexity and platforms into your stack and just focus on the ones that have been proven to work for you up to this point and doubling down on testing new things and producing the content that already works for you. Now, there's a caveat here because there is one thing that you do want to add, and that is email. The sole reason that I'm adding this here and the reason why I'm such a big advocate for email is because over the past few months, my co-founder and I have attracted tens of thousands of viewers through our YouTube videos, and we had no way to gather their information. We didn't collect their emails, we didn't collect their contact information, and so what ended up happening is that we gathered tens of thousands of new viewers that we will never be able to reach back out to again. Because the thing with organic content is you don't really know who's watching your content. It could be a multinational CEO or it can be your neighbor. But if you don't collect the email information, especially in channels like YouTube, you have no clue of who's watching your content. And this, in our case, and in many cases that I know, has meant tens of thousands of lost revenue in people that we will never be able to get in contact with. So the solution for this is really simple. The minute your content starts getting some traction, focus a bit of time on starting to develop free resources. This could be audience and guides, newsletters and communities, or documents or frameworks that you use in your business and you give away for free in exchange for the contact information of your audience. The thing that took me too long to understand is that social media and platforms change. The algorithms change, the trends change, the content that works changes. And so if you're not moving people from a rented audience, a rented platform that you don't own into something that you own as an email list, as a community, then you're missing out on this potential reach. And it's just a matter of time until you get shadow banned, your reach decreases, or the trends of the algorithms change, and you're no longer able to reach out to this amount of people. Let me tell you a quick story. A few months ago, I had this founder that reached out to us because he was in the info space and he was driving traffic to his offer primarily through Instagram. And the reason that he got in contact with us was because he had 300,000 followers and he suddenly got shadow banned. And his business went from making 100K, 200K per month to making 20K just like this. And so these things happen. So that's the reason that you want to bulletproof yourself. And the way to do this is to move this attention that you generate in the first layer of attention through organic content into platforms that you can dominate. Platforms where you can reach 100% of your audience base 100% of the time. And platforms where you can sell more directly to your audience because these people have given you permission to contact them directly because they're interested in the problem that you solve. So if you implement all of this in the content production section of phase 2, you should be able to claim back more than 50% of your time, be able to produce more content and focus on higher leverage tasks, and be able to start moving your audience into channels that you own so you can bulletproof yourself in case that something happens to the platform or the algorithm changes, you will be safe. Now let's move on with performance and profit in phase 2. The main concern when it comes to the financial impact of your content in phase 2 is the inconsistent tracking and the lack of revenue metrics to know how profitable your content is, and specifically which content is the most profitable one. So to graduate, what we want to do is implement in-depth attribution systems that track the exact revenue generated per content piece. Now here's what happens. The minute that you delegate, you incur in a fixed financial cost per piece of content. I wanted to illustrate this with an example. So let's say average prices for the different services listed on screen: thumbnail design, video editing, and scripting. First of all, I wanted to make a disclaimer. These prices may change depending on your industry, the quality of work that you're looking for, and the experience of the person that is providing the services. So let's say for a thumbnail, it takes around $150. For a video edit of a long form piece of content that is between 15 and 20 minutes, it's around $250. And for a script, it takes around $150 for, again, 15 to 20 minute piece of content. Your average cost per piece of content here would be around $450. Knowing your CPP or cost per piece of content is the first number that you need to understand in order to make data-driven decisions. So with all this information, what specific content metrics should you be tracking in order to measure what's your content's profitability? The first one is true revenue per piece of content, how much revenue each content asset generates for you directly over time. The second one is content touchpoints, so the amount of pieces of content that a lead interacts with before making the decision to convert. And finally, the most complicated sounding one, which is not complicated at all, we'll see, is attributed customer lifetime value, which only means identifying which content brings you the clients that pay more over the lifetime as customers of your business. It is almost impossible to track this manually, especially if you have other channels like ads or cold outbound, because many times you don't know if an ad was the first touch point and then the content converted, or if they found you through content and they converted through an ad. So the best platform that we've found to be able to track this is Hyros. In Hyros, you can track all the specific metrics that I mentioned before and even more. So if you want to check out Hyros, you can find the link in the customized content scaling roadmap that you can claim in the first link in the description, but I've also added a link in the description of this video. Now, it is by tracking this number that you can get a clear view on what is your exact return on content investment. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're running a design agency. So the first thing that you need to know is what is your CPB or cost per piece of content. So as we said before, your CPB is $550. Now having the cost per piece of content, the next thing is to know what is your revenue per video. So let's say a specific piece of content brings you 3 new clients that pay $2,000 a month in a retainer for your design agency. And they stay on average for 4 months. So 4 months times 2,000, it's $8,000 per client, times 3, that would equal $24,000 revenue per video. Now, knowing this cost and knowing your revenue, you can calculate how much your return on investment is using this formula. So to calculate your content ROI, you want to divide your revenue per video between your cost per video. So in this case, you made $24,000 out of a video that you spent $550 creating. That is a 43.6x ROI, meaning that for every single dollar that you spent in the creation of this video, you made $43 back. Not bad. Your ROI per video may change depending on the video, obviously, but having this data allows you to double down on the concepts that generate you the most money. You want to track the content assets that generate more profit and specifically more lifetime value for your business and double down on these concepts. So if you've done all this right and you've set the right analytics in place, now you have in-depth attribution system that allows you to see not only which channels are most profitable, but which exact pieces of content are pumping revenue into your business. And finally, team and delegation. So at this stage, the constraint is that you have high management costs having to manage different freelancers and coordinating communication with all of them. So to graduate from this, you want to streamline communication and delivery so you can spend the less time as possible involved in the actual process. Now let's break down how to truly streamline communication and delivery so you can move past being the central hub for every decision. Freelancers are cheaper than an in-house team member, but that's for a reason, and it's that you don't get the customized attention. Freelancers are like mercenaries. You hire them to get the job done, but they're also managing different clients and they're managing communication and deliverables with other people. So the risk of missing deadlines and creating bottlenecks inside of your own production workflow is really high. So the first thing that we're going to do is streamline communication. And to do this, what you want to do is take all your different freelancers and contractors and put them in shared space. The reason for this is twofold. First of all, you don't want to be using different platforms to communicate with different people, one through email, one through WhatsApp, and another one through Slack. And second of all, by being in the same space, they can all know when the other one is supposed to share the deliverables. It's the closest that you can get to create a feeling of a team without hiring a team. The next thing that you want to do is set clear boundaries for communication, because if not, you're going to get run over by the freelancers, sending you work at 3 a.m. and demanding that you check the Slack or that you reply to them after work hours. So be clear on what are your working hours and how many calls are you willing to take per week. This is the standard procedure to protect your time and set clear expectations. So now that you've streamlined communication, we move on to streamlining the delivery. First off, in phase 1 of this roadmap, we discuss how to define clear standards for your brand and which things you would need to document in order to delegate. So here's where this comes in handy. You're going to give them the documents that you built up in phase 1, the SOPs, so they can understand your formats and visuals, your aesthetic guidelines, and your vision and core message. You want to put all these documents into a shared folder that they can access so they can check these resources without having to ask you for them. Once you've done this, the next thing is to actually coordinate the delivery dates. To make sure that the delivery is smooth and that you don't spend too much time involved in this yourself, you want to define specific roles and assign realistic timeframes for each task. So the key points for delegation here is defining who is responsible for each stage, who is going to be doing what and when. What is the expected time frame per task? So for example, the editor, is he going to edit the video in 3 days, in 1 week? What is the expected timeline in which he should get the video done? What is the review window for assets for you and for them? So in how much time are they expected to review an asset that you sent and get back to you, and the other way around? It is also really important to set expectations of what happens if a deadline is missed. If there's no consequences, if a deadline is missed, it will happen over and over and over again until you have to fire that person. So be clear upfront and set clear expectations as of what is the consequence of a deadline being missed. And finally, what tools and platforms are being used. So should they use a specific editing platform? Should they use a specific Notion database to track the whole process, like the one that I'm showing on screen? Things like that. By being extremely clear with all this, you can create a workflow that doesn't break and that doesn't incur in bottlenecks further down the line. Okay, so finally we made it to the recap of phase 2. And the main constraint when you're starting off in this phase is that you have limited time and no leverage, but you do have the resources to bring in that leverage by delegating tasks partially. So what you want to do is, to graduate, you should focus on delegating time-consuming tasks. And as a side note here, you want to pay special attention to the financial tracking part, because if you're producing content but that content doesn't bring money back, then there's pretty much no point on doing all this. Now, with all the systems, delegation, and leverage in place, you should be able to generate the resources that will allow you to ascend to phase 3, scale. All right, we've already seen the bootstrap phase, the delegation phase, and you've generated the initial resources and delegated initial tasks partially. So now we're moving into phase 3, and phase 3 is all about scale. In phase 3 is where content really transforms into a leverage asset for your business. And you're in this phase if you have partial delegation in place, but your current setup isn't scalable anymore. So this is the way this phase looks like. Your role is going to be a strategist. Your role, your most important function here, is to basically be the strategist and know where to allocate the resources to generate the maximum returns. In second place, we have the headcount, and here you're going to be managing 3 to 6 freelancers when you start. So at this point, you've hired your initial freelancers, 1 to 3 in the delegation phase, and you've kept increasing the amount of freelancers to 3 to 6. You're now in a position to transition to a more delegated structure with your first hires or partner. And finally, for leadership structure, you transition to the director role, where you usually have a content manager managing the whole operation beneath you. So in this phase, we're going to break the pattern and we're going to transition straight into team and delegation, because this is the most important part of this phase. And this whole phase is going to be around your selection in team and delegation. So in phase 3, and especially in the section of team and delegation, your constraint is that you're now managing multiple freelancers. In phase 2, we saw how to get your first initial freelancers and which tasks you delegate. And now you've kept growing, you've kept increasing your overhead. And right now you're managing 3 to 6 freelancers and everything's becoming too much of a mess. It is also becoming quite inefficient and expensive at scale. So the way you graduate from this is to transition to a more scalable setup, one that you have more control over, like a team or partnering with a content agency. When you start hiring more freelancers, especially 3 to 6 in that range, something's going to start to happen. One of two things. The first one is that your operational drag is going to start increasing twofold. The reason for this is that these freelancers are also managing other clients. So if you have to manage 3 or so, it can be manageable. But once you start adding more amount and more complexity, and then you need to start coordinating the same deliverables between different freelancers, it all gets really messy. The second thing that happens is that your cost with the freelancer model is linear, meaning that you have a fixed cost per piece of content. And if you want to produce more content, you need to spend more money. In this case, you have no economies of scale, meaning that doubling outputs means doubling costs. Growth gets really expensive really fast. Besides the management cost, there's also some issues that come with it. Being the main one, that at scale from 6 to 12 to 15 freelancers, you're going to be spending the same that you would spend for a partner content agency or for a team, which give you a more in-depth and specific service to you and your brand. The other second one is that there's some things that you're not going to be able to manage with freelancers, and so you're going to still be involved in operation. So the way to get out of this is to basically choose between one of two models, either a content agency or an in-house team. And now we're going to break down what are the pros and cons between these two models. So to be able to choose the best option for you, I've broken down the cost, the control, the scalability, the management, the productivity, and the level of risk in each one of these options. So starting off with cost, a content agency will provide you with a flexible monthly fee that ranges between 5 to 15K a month, depending on the level of service and expertise of the content agency that you're hiring. This price is usually outcome focused and is way lower than hiring an in-house team. On the other hand, an in-house team can range from 10 to 30K a month if you incur in 5 hires. And so if the idea is to replace around 6 freelancers, you're going to be spending around that. This includes salaries, benefits, tools, incentives. It is a high fixed cost and it is pretty costly to fix mistakes. Obviously, the prices that I'm displaying here are a range. This again will vary depending on your industry, depending on the experience of the people that you're hiring, and depending on the market that you're in. Moving on with control, the level of control that a content agency allows is strategic control. You're going to be able to communicate your vision to a content manager, but you're not going to be able to be involved in the nitty-gritty of details. You have low day-to-day involvement, and this is something great. It's going to save you a lot of time, but at the same time, you cannot control every single thing. Once you communicate your vision to the agency and the manager, he's going to be in charge of coordinating everything with their in-house team. And so here's where you can lose the touch on the final details that really make a difference when it comes to scaling and building a long-term personal brand. On the other hand, the in-house team provides full control. This allows you to have more flexibility and to be able to refine your brand and have it exactly up to the last detail be how you want it to be. Also, by not having to intermediate with a content manager, this is going to first save you some time in communication, but also allow you to pivot faster your strategy in case that details aren't up to standard. The other thing that comes with this is deep brand alignment, because once you have your core team inside of your company that understands the vision and that they're there to build for the long term, you're building a content department instead of your company. That's when those people truly understand your brand and they can truly grow something that grows long term. Now, all this comes with a trade-off, which is, again, time. You're going to have to train these people. You're going to have to communicate this vision. The iterations take time. And that's the trade-off that you're incurring. You get more control in exchange for more of your time. When it comes to scalability, running with a content agency model is way more scalable than running with your freelance model. It requires way less time in communication, and you can also get the expertise and the talent from the people inside of the agency plug and play into your business so you can start growing fast. At the same time, if an agency doesn't provide the level of service that you expect from them, finding a replacement isn't that hard as finding a replacement for a full team. In the case of an in-house team, it's quite different. It is pretty slow to scale. You need to find the right people for the right positions, and hiring and firing the right positions is a whole other mess of its own. Again, you have more control over the people that you're choosing to work in your content department, but at the same time, it just takes more time to pre-select who those people are going to be and finding the right fits. So it becomes more of a talent acquisition issue. When it comes to management is extremely easy with a content agency. You just have to communicate with a content manager, as we've mentioned before, and the agency handles the communication with the internal team and making sure that all the deliverables are in place. With an in-house team, you need to be involved. You need to train people, you need to give SOPs, you need to review, you need to make sure that everything is up to standard. This is the trade-off that I've mentioned, comes with control. Productivity is a big one. We mentioned with the freelancers, they're like mercenaries. And so they're not going to be strategically thinking in their free time how they can improve your content, how to come up with new ideas, how to basically create a category of one that differentiates you in the market. When finding a content agency, you can find someone that has deep creative knowledge to help you find your new edge, looking for different things that can position you as a category of one, but it's always limited to a certain amount. With an in-house team, the only ceiling that you have in terms of productivity is, first of all, finding the right talent and people that are really involved. But once you have the right people, there's really no limit to it. It's all about the creative skills and the abilities that these people bring to a table. And finally, risk, and this is going to be the most important factor, or one of the most important ones for many of you watching this video, because if you make a wrong choice while investing in growing your content operation, it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars, and it can mean a financial blow for the business, which can take months to recover from. With a content agency, the risk is medium low, because yes, sure, you're going to be making an investment, you're going to be dedicating resources and a budget to it, but in the worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, you're going to still have some content, you're going to have a clear idea of what doesn't work and what does, and at the same time, you can put an end to the contract, or you can find another agency that provides the right service for you. When it comes to an in-house team, the whole story is different, because if you spend time finding the right people, bringing them on, onboarding them, training them, making sure they get that vision, and then those people leave or they're not the right fit, you really are investing a lot of money, a lot of resources, and it could really be a big blow. It is much harder to reverse poor hires, and that's why every single hire that you make, you're making a big bet on your content operation and in your content team. So what you're seeing right now on screen is the scalability versus cost matrix. And I wanted to give you a quick visual of what is the actual scalability and what is the ceiling for all of these models that we're talking about. So as you can see, the freelance model just goes straight up. And it's because the more pieces of content that you produce, the more you're going to be spending. It's linear spend. You have no economies of scale. It is really not optimal to scale past a certain level, which is the level of max production. Then with an agency, you have a fixed cost, but you also have a fixed level of production. Usually when you hire an agency, you're going to agree upon a certain amount of pieces of content, and those are the ones that are going to be produced. With the agency model, you don't truly unlock economies of scale. You're going to still be investing a fixed amount of money, but what you truly unlock is the level of delegation of not having to oversee every single part of the production process. Now, despite the advantages of the agency model versus the freelance model, at a certain point, you're going to hit max capacity. You're going to produce a certain amount of content. And here you're faced with two options. Either you pay your agency more to produce more, or you transition to an in-house team. Here's the time to transition represented in the graph. And here's where you really should make a decision. Okay, I want to keep on growing with this agency and pay them double for the double amount of content, or I really want to bring this in-house and scale long-term. Because as you can see with the in-house team blue arrow, you're going to be spending a fixed amount of money, depending on how many people you bring in your team, but you have no ceiling for production. It's how much you can stretch the production of your in-house team. So which option should you choose? Well, here's my tactical recommendation based on all of the factors that we've analyzed previously. And so you should choose a content agency, or my recommendation is that you choose a content agency if you're looking for a plug and play solution to scale fast, to get expert talent plug and play into your content with minimal management costs and having to basically not manage HR of hiring, training, and recruiting all these people. For the majority of people watching this video, content agency is the best option. It also allows you to then transition into an in-house team if you really want to take things further. But if you start with an in-house team, then reverting to a content agency can be a bit more challenging and complicated. Also, if we compare the amount of value that a content agency that brings the right talent that they already have and plugs it into your team without having to go through the HR management, especially for the amount of money that you're going to be investing, for the budget that you're going to be investing in a content agency, it really makes the most sense for a majority of founders. Okay, but in which situation does having an in-house team make more sense than having a content agency or freelancers? Well, this is the best option if you really want to build something in-house that you have full control on and that is a long-term asset. If you're really determined to turn your business and your personal brand into a media company, if you know that your face, your reputation is going to become the primary asset for your business and the primary traffic source for your business in the next few years, then this really makes sense as long as you have the resources to commit and to invest and the time and experience to also be willing to hire and train all these people. An in-house team is really the only option that gives you no ceiling for scale. And if that's what you're looking for, then this is the best option for you. So now you have all the information you need to make a decision between your content agency and an in-house team. How do we optimize the content production process for both of these options? Okay, so moving to content production in phase 3, what happens in this stage is that your content is going to start to stagnate, and that's going to be the main constraint. It's going to stagnate in efficiency and in innovation. It is also costing you market leadership and profit to stay in a safe position where you're only testing out things that are proven to work. So what we're going to do to combat this, and what we're going to do to be able to graduate to the next level, is to use short, focused work cycles and test new ideas, new formats, to be able to stay ahead of the curve and to always lead the market instead of be a follower that only tests the things that works. The reason that we started this phase with the delegation and team element is because it's in content production where it comes into play. As we can see in the scalability versus cost metric, independently of the option that you've chosen between agency and in-house team, in the team and delegation section of this phase, you incur no extra cost to produce more content. And with no extra cost is where you can really allocate resources into research and development. And here's where the 10x results are going to come from your content. Here I wanted to add examples from both of our clients, Daniel Dallin and Robert Heineke. So the guy on the left, Daniel Dallin, he is a really successful entrepreneur for those of you who don't know him. And he had been testing with different formats until he found the POV format with the POV style of thumbnails. Now before this, Daniel was creating good quality content and he was getting some results, some views here and there. But after finding this content, after testing and innovating enough to find something that set him apart from the noise in the internet, this is what made his brand completely skyrocket and completely blow up. And this has allowed him to create a unique positioning that people associate with him, basically creating a category of one. Same goes for Robert Heineke, the other one of our clients. Robert runs a really successful LinkedIn agency in Germany, and we're working with him on his YouTube positioning. We were looking for this core concept that could set him apart. We ended up coming up with this concept that was called Roasting My Followers LinkedIn Profiles, that turned out to be a really profitable format, an easy and repeatable format that he's been doing now for a while and has attracted many clients to his business. But both Robert and Daniel, they stumbled with these concepts by purely iterating and trying new things. If they had stuck doing what worked, they wouldn't have unlocked this level of success and this next level of results. And so how do you strategically allocate resources to be able to test and experiment? Well, the first thing is to define your experimentation budget. We need to set aside 10 to 20% of your content resources, efforts, maybe time of your team, to specifically experiment with new content. So out of 5 pieces of content, 20%, so in this case, 1 video, should be purely dedicated to experimenting with a new concept, new format, or even a new platform. You want to first experiment topics, formats, hooks, titles inside of the platforms that you're already dominating. And once these new experiments, these new tests start gaining traction in the platforms that you already dominate and master, then we can expand to future platforms. As you can see, I heavily stand for keeping things simple because I know founders making 6 and 7 figures from content from 1 to 2 platforms. You don't really need to overcomplicate this. Once you start growing your content operation, once you start growing your content team, then you can slowly expand and experiment, not just within platforms, but with new platforms as well. When we're expanding to new platforms, you need to treat content as if you were starting from scratch, meaning don't try to innovate straight away. Take the things that are already working in that platform, test them out, and then you can slowly start experimenting inside of that platform with new formats, new topics, once you feel that you're gaining an understanding and that you're dominating these platforms. So by constantly iterating, you now have a system to avoid stagnation and to be able to find the next new thing that performs 10 or 100-fold better than the things that are working right now by just being early to the next round. And finally, let's finish with performance and profit. So the main constraint when it comes to performance and profit in this stage is that the significant investment that you're making in a content team or an agency is putting a lot of financial pressure on the business. So the way to graduate from this is to maximize your team's efficiency internally and to make sure every single dollar spent on content creation leads to results. So in phase 2, we saw how to calculate your cost per piece of content and your content ROI ratio to figure out which ones are your most profitable content assets and how profitable is your content system. Now we can use this data to transform your content library into a revenue generating asset. The first thing that we want to do is to use the data to identify what are our blue chip assets. And blue chip assets are the ones that are bringing the most revenue to the business. Not views, not subscribers, but revenue. We mentioned we're going to allocate 10 to 20% of the resources into innovation, so the other 80% should be all spent in doubling down on concepts that work. Because having this fixed financial investment, and in order to make a return on this investment, you cannot just post and pray. You need to know exactly which content to post in order to be the most profitable. And the key here is we don't want to only create new content that looks similar to the one that we were posting that has turned out to be the most profitable, but rather take that content and see how we can squeeze the most out of it. This could mean reposting the same video 20 times. A majority of founders are scared to repurpose content over and over again because they fear coming across as repetitive, but it is not the case at all. We've gathered the data with our clients and with ourselves, and we've realized that a majority of the audience hasn't even seen that content in the first place. And from those who have, a big percentage doesn't even remember it. So don't be scared to reuse the same piece of content over and over again, as long as you leave a time period between the last time you used it and the next time. The second thing is identifying the lowest performing videos and trimming those off the workflow is as important, if not more, than repurposing the ones that are already working for you. This way you can almost discard the hypothesis and make sure that you're not going to be spending time in things that you already know don't work. And finally, ruthlessly optimizing the efficiency of your team to drive down your cost per piece of content. This is specifically for those of you who want to transition into the in-house team model, because here you unlock the economies of scale. And so not only doesn't mean that you're going to spend more if you make more content, it actually means that you're going to be spending less because your efficiency and your output is higher. Now, the best way to find out which processes to optimize is by tracking the time per task. And the tool that we recommend for this, the one that we use for clients and internally, is Total Track, and it allows you to track the time spent per task. So you can use this across every single function of the business, but especially when it comes to content, it is really useful to see who's spending more time in which task and who is more or less efficient. Once you're able to pinpoint the tasks that are taking more time, let's say editing or scripting, then you can implement AI workflows, you can implement systems and automation to be able to bring down the time per task so you can basically increase your output as much as possible. It will take for you to gather some data in order to be able to accurately see the whole picture and know which tasks you should be focusing on. But the ones that usually take the most time are editing and scripting. And so if you can just focus on bringing these two down, then your overall output should be higher. Okay, so we finally made it to the recap of phase 3. So when you started the phase, you were managing 3 to 6 freelancers. The management overhead and the lack of ROI, especially diminishing ROI for the content that you needed to produce, was the big constraint. So now to graduate, the best thing you can do is to simplify management, boost the content quality, and turn your investment into a reliable and profitable system by transitioning into an integrated structure, whether that's an agency or a content team, according to what we've discussed along this phase. So as promised, we've covered the whole content scaling roadmap by bootstrapping in phase 1, doing everything yourself to increasing maximum capacity. In phase 2, having those initial resources to delegate and bring in partial help to be able to achieve the next level of scale. And finally, scale by refining processes and transitioning into a more integrated structure for content. Now, again, if you'd like to get your own free customized content scaling roadmap that's specific to you and your business, you can claim that in the first link in the description down below, and we'll send it over to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it valuable. And if you did, drop a follow, consider sharing this with someone that may need it, and see you in the next one. Bye.